Hey everyone, welcome back. For those who are joining me for the first time, my name is Ler Kotengo. I've recently just got back onto YouTube after taking a 2-year break. Actually, it feels like more than 2 years, but anyway, it's okay. I shared with you guys a video of just telling you the story of where I have been at and what I have been up to and what God has been doing in my life. Today, what I want to share with you is a vision that God showed me and the impact that has had in my life and the impact that I feel it would have on your life if you are a believer and if you are searching for God. So please stay tuned. First of all, I'd like to apologize for the sound. I hope that I will get proper sound soon. I also want to apologize for the birds. If you hear birds outside crowing, there are ravens in the compound, there are different birds in the compound, so just bear with me on the sound and the sound of birds, okay? Thanks. So, I don't know what it is about stories of redemption, where whenever someone shares a story of redemption or a story of getting back to the right path or trying to find peace of mind, there's usually an element of hitting rock bottom. Like, people would not naturally want to find redemption or healing or deliverance if they have not gone through something that will give them that reason to look for redemption or healing. And that thing for some people is hitting rock bottom, which was my case. I already had experienced that in Uganda, where I found myself in an SQ, not knowing what life was going to look like in the middle of a pandemic and a lockdown, and having 2 kids going through depression and anxiety. That's Uganda. Came back. That whole story is in the video where I share my story. You can go have a look. So fast forward to 2022, when I'm at the brink of leaving my job. I was working at a church which was really amazing. I met amazing people. But I was still really struggling with a lot of stuff. One of them being social anxiety, the other being depression. I was not all right, although I was surrounded by believers and people who were basically sharing their love for me, even at home. I had a very close friend who was there for me, but I was still stuck in my mind. I was in a cage, like the mind of Ler was constantly in a cage, and it's something that I'd felt for the longest time, probably even since I was a kid. I felt it up until very recently. Just feeling like I was trapped in a cage and my mind did not have the ability to take itself out of that cage. So I felt like my workplace was the biggest source of my anxiety. So I left, and when I left, I cut off the support structure that I had, and I also cut off my monthly income. Because it was 2022, after 2 years after the pandemic hit, every world economy was going through something. And it's still going through something. I mean, the economies of the world are crashing. We're seeing that happen. In 2022 was like the peak of it. Election year, business wasn't working. People were getting laid off still. So I was caught in all of that. I wasn't able to pay rent. I wasn't able to pay my bills. Thankfully, I have an amazing family. My youngest sister was so gracious. At the time, she owned a house. They weren't living there at the time. And so she said, Larry, you could come and stay here in this house, rent-free, for as long as you need. So I went and stayed there in my sister's house with my kids. When I got to my sister's house, I think it was maybe a month later, they also were feeling the strain, the financial strain, the economic strain that this country has been going through. And so they needed to let go of that house It was a whole farm, beautiful place. They needed to let go of that house so that they could continue where they were, all their plans that they had for the future. So they told me that we had until December of last year to figure out what would happen. So the whole time I'm trying to find a solution. Everything that I was trying, nothing was working. I tried to get jobs. I tried to raise my business. I tried to even just ask people for help. And there was a wall down every path that I took. There was nothing that was opening up. And I became angry with God because I thought that He had my back. I thought that He was going to provide for all my needs. But then here I was, still stuck with a doomsday date that was very real for me. December came and my uncertainties just continued growing. Though I was praying, though I was reading the Word, though I was still doing research, a lot of research about God and the history of the church and religion and all of that, still trying to understand the things of God. And my mom, I remember one time, this was right before Christmas, she came to me and she was trying to tell me about God's love. And she was telling me, Claire, if you are able to take the suffering that you have right now and hand it over to Jesus and then make a prayer for just one soul to get to come to the love of Jesus and to get to come to the cross, then you would be living in God's will. I did not want to hear that. I did not want to hear what I needed to do about my attitude towards my suffering. I did not want to hear that. Why are you telling me about my attitude towards my suffering? No, tell me that the suffering is going to go away. Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear. I got angry with my mom that day. I walked away from the conversation. I went upstairs. I remember that day very vividly. I went upstairs to shower. I got into the bathtub, turned on to the shower, and then I put my hand on the wall like this. I was so broken. I was so broken. I can't even begin to tell you. I put my hand on the wall like this and I was like, God, why? Just tell me why. And in that moment, God opened my eyes and I saw what He needed me to see. God opened my eyes and instantly I was taken to a place that looked like a place that was above the universe, above the earth, above space. And what I saw was the image of a man bigger than these places, bigger than the world, who seemed to me like a father, an older man. And this man was holding a skewer. At the end of the skewer was me, puny little human self, Claire, naked, who was standing in that shower, me, at the end of this skewer. And what God was doing, let me move back so you can see. In front of this father figure, this older man figure, was a fire, a big fire. And He was taking me in this skewer into and out of that fire. And He was showing me what He was doing inside my soul, to my soul, through the suffering and through every suffering that I've ever experienced in my life. This was what He was saying. You cannot redeem your sinful nature. You cannot redeem your sinful nature. You cannot redeem your sinful nature through the fire, in and out. Telling me that I cannot redeem my sinful nature. And He told me, Claire, I am holy, and so I require holiness. No one can enter the kingdom of heaven having not been made holy. So you have to go through the fire of purification, because you cannot redeem your sinful nature. You cannot redeem your sinful nature. He said this over and over again, telling me that the flesh, this flesh that houses us, this flesh is inclined to sin, and it is sinful. But God has come so that we may be redeemed, that we may be purified and enter into his kingdom once we leave this flesh here on earth. And he's telling me that I have to go through the fire. And then he asked me, Lair, how do you even think you're able to stand? How do you think you're able to stand the suffering? How do you think you're even able to stand in that shower right now, going through the purification process that I'm taking you through? God opened my eyes again, and I was able to see Jesus on the cross standing behind me. And he was telling me, this is why I came here on earth. Me, God, I came here in the form of a man so that I could suffer for you, so that I could go through hatred, so that I could be punished. Me, so that you could go through life and all the suffering and all the purification and get to the other side, yeah, holy. That is why I came, so that you can lean on me. And I saw my body, that body that was at the end of the skewer, hanging onto the cross, being lifted up by the cross. And God was saying, minus that, you would not be able to stand the fire of purification. I was so overwhelmed. I became weak in my knees. I just lay down in the bathtub on my side in a fetal position. And I felt like God carried me like this in his arms, in that fetal position, puny little self. And he carried me from this point to this other point. And while he was taking me there, he told me the areas of my life that he was purifying. And he was saying that the biggest thing, Lair, that you have held on to is your identity. You, yourself, and gratifying yourself and trying to live your life in a way that just satisfies you and your flesh. And he told me that it's the reason why every single human being is struggling, because everyone is trying to hold on to their identity. When God created us, he created us in his image and in his likeness. And he breathed his breath of life in us. And he said that it was good. And Eve believed the lie of the devil, the lie that was, you will be like God, you will not die, but you will know good from evil. You will be like God. It was a statement of identity. There's nothing that Eve lacked, but the devil came and lied to her that she needed to have knowledge and she needed to have her own identity to be like God. That's the lie that we all believed. That's the lie that I had fashioned my life around up until that moment where God was telling me that I am holy and he is the only one who can redeem our sinful nature. So he took me to that place and was explaining all of this to me. The fact that we are holding on to our identity and the whole world has become a selfie world. It's all about self. Even now, I am still living in a selfie world. It's all about me still. And it is difficult to live a Christian life. It is difficult to hand yourself over to God. It is difficult to kill the man, the old man, for him to be crucified with Christ and to no longer live. It is difficult. In fact, I would dare say, without God's grace, it is impossible. So God was showing me all of that. And then he took me to a place. He placed me on a very high pillar. I could not see the bottom of it. He placed me there and he told me, Lair, are you going to give me your identity? Are you going to give me your life? And are you going to allow yourself to be used by me? Because there are people who need to hear this. And for you to do that, you have to give up who you are. This entire experience lasted for about 3 hours. I turned off the shower, I got out of the bathtub, I sat on the edge of the bathtub, and God was just telling me a lot of stuff. And He's been telling me a lot of stuff ever since that time. Things that I needed to say. Of course I struggled with it. Of course I did. No one wants to come out here and be a Christian in 2023. No one wants to come out here and sound foolish and say all the stuff that I've already said. No one wants to come here and say that it's only God and only Jesus who can save you, that nothing else can. No one wants to come and say that you do not have the power to chart your own life. I do not want to be ridiculed. I do not want to be put in a box. I do not want to be laughed at. But guess what? We were promised suffering by the King of Kings. We were promised to be hated. We were promised to be put aside and ridiculed and thought to be weird. Those are the promises that Jesus gave us that we'll experience here on earth. And not just that, we were promised great suffering. Just go and read the book of James and you will see. In fact, read the whole Bible and you will see. So, for me to do this is not to claim anything, but just to be in obedience to God, to try and walk my steps in obedience to God and the path that He has already laid out for me. So I agreed. I agreed to everything that God was telling me. I had seen Him. I had seen the fire that He was taking me through. I had seen His salvation, Jesus on the cross that was holding my helpless body up. I had heard why He was doing all of these things to me. He made it very plain and simple. That it was because of my choosing myself, making myself the idol, worshipping the creature instead of the Creator. And He had asked me if I was willing to speak. And I said yes. December was still there. Yeah, this was a few days before Christmas. Christmas came and towards the 27th, I began to pack out of faith. And my cousin, after that, came and told me, Larry, you can bring your stuff to my house. I will store them there for you. No problem. I'm telling you, I have the best family. They're just incredible. By the 31st, we were out of the house. First, second, third, I was staying in my parents' house. Guys, things had not changed just because I saw a vision. I was still going through suffering. God was still chiseling the ego inside of me, removing the ego inside of me, removing the pride. I want to live with my parents. There's no 38-year-olds who would want something like that to happen to them. And that happened to me. But what did God do? On the 4th of January, God made a way. We were able to get everything from different people supporting, mostly my dad. We were able to get every single thing that we needed to bring us from Nairobi to Malindi, which was a dream that I had had a few years back. It's a dream that my sister had, my big sister had a few years back. Same as my mom, same as my dad, same as my small sister. And God provided for every single thing, including all our stuff to be transported to Malindi. And when I got here, I got a job through a friend. And God has been giving us the grace to work and to paint and to create all these things. Every single day is a journey. It is not a walk in the park. It is not separate from suffering. Our life here is not glitzy. It's not glamoury. It's still very much, very real as we are being purified by the Father because we are sinful, because of this flesh. This is the reason why my faith in God has been rubber stamped, because of everything that I have ever been through and the faith that I had from a little child to the time when I walked away from Him and Him bringing me back and still walking with me so that when I finish the race, I'd finish it with Him being proud of me. That's my story. I hope that I will see you in the next videos. Bye.